My name is Tyrone. I'm co-owner of Sucker Free Jiu Jitsu. I've been doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu now for almost 9 years. I met Weiss when I was a purple belt. Since then, we had there was a lot of chemistry in our relationship, and then we just built our brand, Sucker Free Jiu Jitsu. And then, not even a year into meeting each other, we developed a school together and opened up. Since then, we linked up with the likes of JT Torres, who's an enormous supporter of ours, who Weiss got his black belt from, and I got my brown belt from as well. We've been an affiliate under Essential for a little bit, and if you come into the academy, you'll see me run the kids program, doing some of the adult classes, working me on the desk, just a little bit of everything.
So my name is Weiss. I'm a BJJ black belt under JT Torres, like Tyrone was saying. I'm also the co-owner, and I'm the head instructor for the adults. And I've been training for about 9 years now.
So I want to get into the school itself, because I kind of stumbled upon the school through Instagram and some of your kind of videos, which I thought were really funny. But at the same time, as soon as I got past the funny part, and you have a different approach to how you communicate your school, I was drawn to the name, of course, which is called Sucker Free Jiu Jitsu. So would you mind explaining to people why your school is different and why you decided to name it Sucker Free Jiu Jitsu?
For sure. So when Tyrone and I first got into Jiu Jitsu, obviously we fell in love with it. Jiu Jitsu is a beautiful art, very logical. And we thoroughly enjoyed it for what it was and what it did for us. And, we fell in love with it, but there was a lot of factors that we really didn't fall in love with. And we saw it early on, and we both noticed it, and we tried to bring light on it. And a lot of people were very impressionable by their instructors. And it was almost like the boy who cried wolf. We tried to discuss it, but nobody took it seriously. We saw little things. I'm like, yeah, this seems like control. This doesn't seem like the way an instructor should be towards his students. Not being able to ask upper ranks to train, not being able to train elsewhere, needing to get permission to train elsewhere, and we always thought that was very outlandish. It's you pay a fee, you should be able to train wherever you want. You shouldn't have to explain where you train. Nobody owns what you do. Nobody owns your jiu-jitsu. Your jiu-jitsu is yours. We are just your instructors, and we provide a service, and we will try to provide that service as best as we can, while being compassionate, understanding, accepting, and loving. And Sucker Free was just something in American culture. It was a TV show on MTV2, and it was just really good hip hop music. There was no bullshit. It was just the best MCs expressing their music. And I'm big into hip hop. We both grew up within that era of hip-hop, the golden age.
What brought about this discussion is that, we're right slap bang in the middle of two major events in current human history. One is obviously the COVID crisis, which has crippled jiu-jitsu schools all over the world. And it has raised many issues concerning how jiu-jitsu will now move forward as a sport and both as an instructional process. And more importantly, it has coincided with the BLM movement after the Floyd murder and what that has brought along with it, and the discussion, of course, that it's brought along with it. And what has happened to jiu-jitsu is that we're talking about a sport that prides itself on being inclusive and being anti-bullying and being everyone has a place in jiu-jitsu, but at the same time, you have a lot of the main pillars of thought of the current state of jiu-jitsu expressing and supporting positions, both political and social, that aren't really connected with what jiu-jitsu is supposed to represent. And this has brought about my trying to connect with you guys, because when I originally saw Weiss's posts and Instagram stories, I realized that you were trying to be vocal about this problem and dealing with a lot of pushback.
We tried to bring light on it and not be aggressive, but it's one of those things where you kind of have to be aggressive, because it's not really, people try to make it like it's a political agenda, but it's not. I mean, human rights, equality should not have to be a political agenda. It's just it should be the norm. You know what I mean?
We have a trademark called No Politics, Just Jiu Jitsu, and it's printed on our wall. And that's what we did. We felt that there was a lot of weird stigma in jiu-jitsu, and we wanted a safe environment where everyone could express themselves and not have to be marginalized in any way. So that's why we created this space we called No Politics Jiu-Jitsu, because we didn't want anybody to discuss their political beliefs, because like you said, after doing jiu-jitsu for so long, I started to see the real framework, the political framework of some of these instructors, some of the people involved in jiu-jitsu. So at first we tried to kind of be a little neutral, always bringing light and attention here and there, but we didn't want to be too preachy as well. But I think now is a time where it called for us to speak out a little more.
Why do you think that no one else is dealing with the elephant in the room, which is, you know, the fact that jiu-jitsu is supposed to be all-inclusive and a big family, which I think that's the same thing with most martial arts, though. It's not, you know, but it seems to be more prevalent as a communicational tool in jiu-jitsu. But at the same time, people seem to be ignoring that some of the major personalities that are driving jiu-jitsu forward are either absent from the conversation that's taking place right now, or are very prominent in the conversation in the sense that they're taking a very weird position that kind of goes off into the far right.
For sure. I think jiu-jitsu culture is very patriarchal. It's very machismo. And there is a lot of like police officers that are involved. We train a lot of police officers. So I think people are scared to rub people the wrong way. And I feel like no matter what you do, no matter how you present it, and I did my best to try to present it without coming off aggressive and trying to be understanding. You know, I was trying to stress the fact that not, you know, I didn't say all police officers are bad, but we cannot deny that there are some police officers that aren't necessarily good people and are racist and will target the oppressed people. And that's what we're trying to shed light on. And people really took it the wrong way. People really started to ostracize us. But, you know, these are things we always believed. And we felt like we had a duty to express this, because like we have a lot of African-American students that we need to speak out for. It's like, how could we teach them and not fight for them and not show that we have their backs? And you know, people throw this idea of family, and how could you really say someone's family you're not willing to fight for them?
On that topic, because you mentioned that you have police officers that are training in your school, what has been their understanding of the situation, both in the general context of the BLM movement, as well as your predicament, as your school's predicament? Because you know, from your social media posts, it's evident that you've received like all sorts of threats about your, but you're basically saying that some of the major personalities in jiu-jitsu, their positions are problematic and so forth. So how has that kind of worked in the school?
Fortunately, our students are very understanding, and they actually support what we do, and they know where we're coming from, because they know who we are. They see the way we treat them. They see the way we teach them. We have a relationship with them. But then you get all these other people on the internet that don't know Tyrone and I. They don't know the training dynamic. They don't know our relationships with our students. And I touch base with all these police officers, and I make sure to let them know that I still care about them, that they're still my students, and I still love them, and it's beyond them.
You come into our school, you have to have an open mind. You know, we both come from immigrant parents. You know, we have Colombian, Ecuadorian background, Weiss Sakhizada background. So, you know, we definitely provide a very diverse group of people.
So what's the situation now? I mean, because from what I gather, you received some sort of pretty vocal threats online.
Yeah. They were all from private accounts. It was like 3 or 4. You know, there were a couple death threats, and I had like some students that would defend me. One actually commented saying that I was like a drug addict. And,
I saw that. That was amazing.
And, yeah, it was really weird. I didn't know how to process that.
Yeah, people want T-shirts now.
People want. I'm gonna make a Sucker Free. We're gonna make the Sucker Free logo with a hammer and a sickle.
Also, I couldn't understand how he connected the two. Like, can only communists take drugs? Because that you know, that ruins it for a lot of people.
It's the weirdest thing. It's like the most faux nationalism, like going around calling people communists because you don't agree with their stance.
How can the U.S. move forward from this especially because there's a very visible divide between the police force, or a healthy percentage of the police force, and the general public. It's not something that's particularly new, but it's certainly been brought to a head because of the Floyd murder. But can you see a way forward?
From my perspective, and my perspective should not be taking,
take
it with a grain of salt, obviously. I feel like police officers are there to service, protect and service, right? So I think there's got to be a way that they're held more accountable. That's all we ask for. We can't completely eradicate racism. People are always going to be racist, but you got to hold people accountable. Maybe have their badge numbers written really big and bold so they can't hide it. There's been cases where police officers hide their badge numbers so they can get away. Constantly keep, video on. There's police officers that will obviously try to find a way to disrupt their...
Switch it off.
Exactly. So that should always be on. Things like this will keep people being honest, almost like it's honesty through paranoia, but that's better than nothing.
What I find intriguing about this whole situation is the fact that even though there's so many people disagreeing about the BLM movement and what's been brought forward by the Floyd murder, at least it's clear cut. You know what you're talking about. People disagree and people agree, but it's pretty evident what's going on. What I find intriguing and strange about this whole jiu-jitsu issue is the fact that it's almost like people are afraid to talk about it within the community. It's almost like they're afraid of what that might mean for the sport and the hobby in general.
Right.
That if you take someone's social and political position that doesn't really sit well with what jiu-jitsu is supposed to stand for, somehow his teachings as a teacher of the art no longer have the same weight. And I don't get why one should exclude the other, in the sense that, like, someone like Renzo Gracie or whatever, there's no doubt that he knows the art better than most people in the world, but that still shouldn't exclude him from being criticized on his positions, right?
Right. There should always be scrutiny to keep these people in check. And if there is no accountability, they're just going to get away with anything and everything. And I think that's the issue, is that we don't really have any major organizations. I know Bloody Elbow tried to bring light on it, but even Bloody Elbow missed, there was a nuance that was lacking. And it's like stuff he was already sharing. So I don't get why people are mad that we're just pointing out things that people already shared, so like, don't kill the messenger, but they want to kill the messenger. I'm the messenger. What's
the way forward for jiu-jitsu as part of the global community? Because this is an issue that should be addressed by the entire community of the sport, right?
Right. Just be honest with where you stand. Like we've always been transparent with our ideals. We've always moved forward. We just wanted to create an actual place that is inclusive and not pretending to be inclusive. Everyone can go and say like, oh, this is open to all walks of life, but you tolerate people within that hour of training, and then you go out and you post all sorts of nonsense on the internet. That's like counterintuitive.
You said that just because you're a black belt now, you don't deserve more respect as a human being if you're a bit of a douchebag, right?
Absolutely. I think what I said was black belts should not be held to a pedestal. They're very imperfect people. Just because you have some sort of proficiency in something, like, all right, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 9 years, that doesn't make me feel like I'm better than anybody else. Like, it's weird. It's a very weird concept. And a lot of these people aren't even educated,
So just for the record, you haven't developed any godlike abilities as yet.
No. And you never really will, you never really will. Like, man, I don't care how fucking good you are at fighting. Like, you're great at violence, so that means everything else you say goes and is right. Like, it's such a warped belief.
Black belts are elevated within this community.
It's really strange. Like, we get it. You're good at jiu-jitsu. That is important, but you should also make sure, like, you're very unbiased and you stick within that realm. Like, be good at what you're good at. You're good at instructing. You're good at teaching jiu-jitsu. great. Be compassionate and be understanding enough to know that you don't fucking know everything.
By the way, especially the Brazilian side of the sport, just to end on this note, was very vocal about their support of Bolsonaro during the elections. But somehow, during this complete sort of train wreck of his, you know, ride with power, they've been surprisingly silent.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, he's a complete train wreck of a governor, and it's kind of like, maybe you should say a few things more, you know, but strangely they're not.
They're very scared too. They're very scared, especially with Bolsonaro's links with Renzo Gracie, you know.
That's right, yeah. He's involved in the administration, like, personally.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, he made it political just by doing that, you know. He always he never hit his politics and what he believed in. He always
never. Yeah. I mean, he's been vocal about his support of the Saudis and the Saudi regime. So it's not like he's ever hidden. I completely agree. Anyway, guys, do you have any last kind of message as both instructors of your art, as school owners, and as people going through this strange set of times that we're living in?
Yeah, just don't be afraid to be yourself. Be genuine. You know, you'll attract the right people, and you know, a lot of people talk about the toxic environments that they're in. We just wanted to let everyone know if you're under a school that has a toxic environment, don't be afraid to leave. Change is scary, but don't be afraid to take that first step, because the opportunities that come after you make those steps are endless, and that's what I encourage anyone to do.
When you're put in a toxic gym, sometimes you feel like you're stuck because there's no alternative sometimes, you know, like you're stuck at that school. So you're like, fuck, man, like, do I just give it up? A lot of people fall out of love with jiu-jitsu with how it's presented, but jiu-jitsu is beautiful. Jiu-jitsu is perfect. It's just the people that sometimes present it are very flawed. And a lot of people try to look past it because they wear a black belt. But if you are in a toxic environment, there's nothing wrong with you. You are not sensitive. You are aware. You are conscious, and you need to do what's best for you. You need to leave a gym like that. You know, it's very problematic. So there's no reason to continue training at a gym that's hateful, that's just like unapologetically toxic. Like, we've been there. That's why we were able to build a school like Sucker Free. We had our shitty experiences. I've had people like that train with me, upper ranks, that like block me on social media because I'm of Afghan descent. My family's Muslim, and I was very nice to them, but the second that they found out I was Muslim, they're like, oh, fuck this guy, I'm going to block him. All right, you want to train at a toxic school? Go and fucking do that, you know? But if you want to go to a place where people genuinely care about you, they care about your progression, and won't treat you like a second-class citizen, come to Sucker Free Jiu Jitsu.